All right, this is the news of the week. The Cincinnati Bengals, will they get these deals done? Al Golden, new defensive coordinator, introduced earlier this week. But at this point, we're talking to you on Friday. It really feels like old news, especially considering the fact that Duke Tobin did speak recently, like about midweek or so. And his comments, while I will explain why I don't take much stock in them, we can just discuss the contract, what Jamar Chase is what's going through his head. Joe Burrow's comments, T. Higgins, can they get a deal done there? Trey Hendrickson, can they get a deal done with him? There's so much swirling around this team this week, and we're going to dive in right now. I'm your host, Elise Jesse, and you are watching Deep in the Stripes.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Deep in the Stripes with Elise Jesse.
From 31 yards, McPherson. And Cincinnati is heading to the Super Bowl. They did it. They beat Mahomes at home. Wow, Joe Burrow. No way.
The sickest Cincinnati Bengals podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Okay, so Duke Tobin has some comments for the contract situation. Kelsey Conway of the Cincinnati Enquirer went down and got the exclusive interview with Duke. This is the first time that he is really speaking since July. So even though I don't think that he is going to say anything inflammatory, I do think that the fact that he is saying anything at all is noteworthy. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is the fact that he was speaking on Jamar Chase. They are still trying to get a deal done with him. That started last summer. As I understand it, the Bengals were the one who brought up the contract extension to Jamar Chase's camp. They were the one who initiated it. And trying to get him cheap, Chase was just kind of waiting to see what else would unfold within the NFL at his position with Justin Jefferson, for example, CeeDee Lamb. And then it was reported that they got the money right, the money they agreed on. And then in the 11th hour, as I understand it, the structure was not as Jamar Chase wanted it. The guarantees were not as he wanted it. And the deal did not get done. The deal fell through because of the way it was structured. And that when you see the reports or the articles where they say like there was a cash flow issue, that's part of what the structure, that's what they're referencing essentially, the structure issue, and then guarantee. So just as a reminder, Justin Jefferson, 4 years, $140 million, 110 guaranteed. CeeDee Lamb, 4 years, 136. That was his extension. 100 guaranteed. So the Enquirer asked Duke Tobin whether or not they felt like they could, I'm paraphrasing, but whether or not they felt like they could get a deal done with Chase. And Duke Tobin does say it's a high priority for us. He kept talking about the framework of the deal. And to me, is there a new framework maybe that has been introduced? Because the framework from last year has expired because you didn't get a deal done with Jamar Chase, and then Jamar Chase goes out and has an all-pro year. He's a triple crown. He is the best wide receiver in the National Football League, and your quarterback wants him on the team. You've got to figure out a way to pay this man. Here is what, if you were watching the Pro Bowl Skills Challenge last night. First of all, before we even get into his comment, this is such a sidebar, I know, but I have to talk about this. It was just so ridiculous watching the quarterback skills competition. Nico, man, he didn't get a lot of those trivia questions right. Joe Burrow only had a single minute to hit all of his targets. I thought it was incredible that I think there was 1 second winding down and the target number 5 was moving in the back, and Joe Burrow lets go of the ball with a second left on the clock and he hits the moving target, the toughest one on the stage. Of course, he loses that competition. Every other quarterback gets like a minute 10 or a minute 30. Typical. It just showed Joe Burrow is a very, very special talent. I think if he had 30 more seconds, he would have blown every other quarterback out of the water. Truly, I believe that. Okay, so a little sidebar. Just had to reference that for a second. But Joe Burrow during this competition, or after this competition, I believe, was asked about Jamar Chase. And he said, I'm going to read this off to you. I don't know what more Jamar Chase could do and do to prove himself. We have several guys like that who have stepped up for us and deserve to be paid what they are worth. Paying Jamar Chase, obviously the priority. Now, I thought it was interesting that Conway asked Duke Tobin about keeping Jamar Chase and T. Higgins together. And the first thing Duke Tobin said was, it's going to be hard. That doesn't give me a lot of confidence in the T. Higgins area. Would I be shocked if they tagged him? Not at all. Not at all. Do they often sign players after tagging them? Not very often. No. So as far as a long-term deal with T. Higgins, I feel like that is one of the ones that's more up in the air, if you will. I think they might lean into the draft. They might. And I think that if there is not a deal done by April, you got to pay attention to the draft, who they draft at what stage, at what position. Like, it will be very telling, considering their history, of what their plans are for T. Higgins moving forward if a deal has not been reached by that point. If you remember, and I know I reference this kind of often, I think it's because it's one of the most wild situations that I remember, just because of the emotion that went into it with the specific player, with Whitworth, and Whitworth wanted to stay, and he had conversations with Mike Brown, and instead of signing him to a long-term deal, they decide to instead draft Cedric Ogbuehi and also Jake Fisher. And that sent a very clear message to Whitworth about his future in Cincinnati. And so that's kind of how I am looking at it too. Obviously the age factor is not there with T as it was with Andrew Whitworth. But I think if there is not a deal reached by then, you pay attention to how they draft, and that will be very, very telling of what they plan to do as far as keeping the other receiver that Joe Burrow wants in the building. Now, Trey Hendrickson, you might remember, I'm assuming that you guys remember. If you don't, I'll remind you, Trey Hendrickson asked for a trade last year. He wanted an extension, asked for a trade. They were like, no, kick rocks. No. And he ended up playing. He didn't want to talk about that situation with anybody in 2024. He's on the last year of his deal, and he was the most productive defensive end in the league. And Duke saying that, he knows that he deserves money and he is, been productive. He's referencing all of that. And then also referencing, like, you can't pay top money at every position. I'll be interested to see how that deal gets done. I really will be. Obviously, you want to keep Trey Hendrickson in Cincinnati. I don't know if he's going to ask for another trade. I don't know if he'll hold out. I'm not sure how Trey Hendrickson would handle that situation if he does not get an extension and they expect him to play on the final year of his deal. I think that the fact that Trey Hendrickson is 30 and turns 31 in December, in the Bengals' eyes, 30 is old. Even though he is a freak of nature, I think that they will look at the contract and the amount of years, because players, as you know, like, they're trying to get the most money. They're trying to extend their career as long as possible. I believe the average within the NFL is like 5 years, which is not a very long career. But I think they'll look at him and they'll say, will you be at the top of the pecking order? Will you be a sack leader at 32, at 33? We don't know that. So I think that might work against him in a way, but I'll be interested to see how that all shakes out too. Oh my gosh, another thing we got to talk about. Paul Dehner Jr. had this out earlier this week. Eric All Jr. being out all of 2025. That is a devastating blow for this offense. Even though he was a rookie last year, I in speaking with him, I was always so impressed by the way that he would talk about loving going out and blocking. He would say, like, I go out there, no fear, putting his body on the line. He doesn't care. He wants to block. He loves it. He thrives in blocking. You're not going to find someone better at that position to do what he was doing. And the Cincinnati Bengals, gosh, they got a good one. And as I understand it, his surgery with Iowa has led to this situation. Out for the remainder of 2025. So I'll be interested to see how they handle the draft, especially knowing that information. God, she's got to come back from an ACL, and what does it require? 2 surgeries? Like, dang. He was such a promising tight end. He's got so much potential. I felt like this offense was operating in a seamless manner with Eric All Jr. on the field. So that is extremely disappointing. Sucks for the Bengals, man. Like they're poor Zach. I'm not a Zach Taylor apologist, but I kind of feel bad for the guy sometimes. I do. Like I think about the human aspect of it. And it's like, okay, even with the Jamar Chase situation, think about this for a second. Let's pretend like your boss comes to you and your boss is like, hey, we want you to win this client over. It's a huge presentation that we want you to give in front of this huge client. The presentation is in September, and we want you to do a PowerPoint presentation. And the only problem is we have not purchased Microsoft Word yet, and we also don't know if we're going to have a computer for you or not. What are you supposed to do? Zach Taylor, probably above all of us, is hoping that they get a deal done with Jamar Chase. And I'm not trying to say that Jamar Chase is a computer, but he is a very vital tool in winning games. If you want to compete in a Super Bowl, you're going to need Jamar Chase down the field for Joe Burrow. Let's reference last year when the Cincinnati Bengals and Jamar Chase, their camps were not able to agree on a contract. Jamar Chase sits out of training camp. And I remember specifically asking Jamar Chase, is this going to hamper any kind of timing that you have with Joe at the start of the season? And he assured me, no, that's not going to be an issue. Like, that's not a big deal. Okay, well, let's go back to game 1 against New England. Jamar Chase was a game time decision. The Bengals lost 16-10. Joe Burrow did not throw a single touchdown in that game. Jamar Chase had 6 catches for 62 yards. He not on the field. Game 2 against the Chiefs. Chase, 4 catches, 35 yards. Lost to the Chiefs, 26-25. Imagine if Chase had already been practicing, had been in training camp. The stress of the contract situation was already behind him, and he was able to play freely at the beginning of the season. You don't want slow starts. You want the bank, and Duke Tobin referenced this. What he didn't like about last season was their ability to close games. And if you want to close games and Joe Burrow has the ball, we all feel better if number 1 is also out on the field. It's like an automatic touchdown in my eyes. It's like they're mind readers with each other, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. So I just don't want to see happen again in 2025 at the start of the season what happened in 2024. I don't want to see another holdout. I don't want to, granted, I thought it was great of Chase to be there and be in the locker room, be with his teammates, and do stuff off. He was like riding in a cart with another coach and just kind of getting his own work in there. But I don't want to see that again. No. I am tired, as much as you are probably tired, as much as Zach Taylor and Duke Tobin are tired of these slow starts, climbing out of a hole. It is getting so old. So that's my thoughts on that. I've been going back and forth on whether or not to even reference the Justin Tucker situation. What in the world? What in the world? I have a question. No, I don't want to know the answer to that. I was going to ask, like, how does someone get banned from a spa? And then I'm like, no, I don't even want to know how that happens. What? There are 6 massage therapists who there's something going on with Justin Tucker, and I haven't read all of the details about it, but it looks very, very murky. I know Justin Tucker put out a statement saying that is absolutely unequivocally false, and all that does is hurt him and his family. I don't know. That's going to be interesting. All right. So if you want, I have some interesting, an interesting class announcement to give you guys. I will be going to New Orleans with Sick Media for Super Bowl coverage. So we will be there all week. We're going to be on Radio Row. We are going to be hitting the floor. We're going to get as many interviews as possible. Like, we are going to be hustling. And that is truly my favorite way to operate. So if you want to get the latest interviews, we are going to be posting so much more next week. I know it's only once a week in the off season and then twice a week during the Bengals football season. But next week, we are going to be posting like crazy. So if you want the latest on the interviews, the information coming out, you're going to want to subscribe, ring that bell so that you get a notification when those interviews go up. We're going to be posting like mad, and it's going to be so much fun. I'm excited for you guys to go on the journey with us. And we are going, the next time I see you, it will be from New Orleans. So thanks for being here. Let me know in the comments. Actually, I would love to know in the comments what you think about the Offensive Player of the Year. I would think if it's not Jamar Chase, it would be Saquon. We'll see about that. I fully expect Joe Burrow to win Comeback Player of the Year. I don't expect Trey Hendrickson to win Defensive Player of the Year, but that would be pretty cool. Just the simple fact that the Bengals have 3 players up for these awards is crazy, considering their record, considering they missed the playoffs for a second straight year. Okay, that is it. I will see you next week.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Deep in the Stripes with Elise Jesse on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.